Okay, well, we're on lesson 70 of the workbook of the Course in Miracles. My salvation comes from me, and there's a lesson in here that an old friend of mine, the old man used to try to teach just about every day that the problem and the solution can be found right next to each other in the same spot. And that's what Jesus is attempting to offer us, the hope of remembering and understanding today. But there's an incredible line in this lesson that little paragraph. And he says, first of all, the lesson is number 70, and it's my salvation comes from me. Where else could it possibly come from, since outside of you there is nothing? And something that I like to remind myself by reminding everybody is, please don't depreciate the power of your mind by thinking there's something outside of it. Since all illusions of salvation have failed you, surely you do not want to remain in the clouds looking vainly for idols there when you could so easily walk on into the light of real salvation. Now, I don't know how many of you hear that, nor do I know how many more attempts to find salvation where salvation is not you have left in you. But I assure you that if you haven't found it yet in the places that you've been looking, then there's a good chance that you need a 12-step program that tells you insanity is repeating the same mistake over again and expecting different results, because that's basically what he's trying to tell you right there in that line. Since all illusions of salvation have failed you, surely you do not want to remain in the clouds looking vainly for idols there when you could so easily walk into the light of real salvation. And as a person, as a human being in space and time, you will experience no greater joy than the moment that you walk into that light of salvation and recognize that you're really saved and there is nothing to fear. Now get me, I want to hear say this. When that occurs, it may not be that you still don't fear things, but it will be that within the memory of the consciousness association that you're utilizing to stay a body in space and time, you will surely have available right next to every moment of fear that recognition of salvation that took place in you, where you experienced the joy of knowing that you're saved, knowing that God is not out to get you, knowing that you're not being judged except by the judgments that you're holding in your own mind. And then you will have the ability to make the choice which one you want to be true for you in that instant, because by your choice it is true for you, and by your choice it is done unto you. And that's the great joy of recognizing that, I'm doing this to myself. It doesn't matter what it is you have done. When you recognize you're doing it to yourself, at least then you have the ability to use choice wisely, or not choose at all and continue to do what you like, or what you think you like, and what you think offers you hope somewhere in the future. But salvation is immediate. Salvation is immediate. There's a whole section in the Course, in the text, that talks about the immediacy of salvation. When salvation comes, it's immediate, it's here and now, it's present. It is the antidote for every situation that you think is causing you something other than peace and the recognition of love and the ability to love yourself and your brother, because God is love, and therefore so are you and your brother. Try to pass the clouds by whatever means appeals to you. Now that's a broad stroke of a statement. Whatever means that you could use to get through those clouds, you get through those clouds. Whatever means appeals to you, try to pass through them. If it helps, this is the line I wanted to get to. If it helps you, think of me as holding your hand and leading you. And I assure you, this will be no idle fantasy. And as I have said from my own experience, when Jesus makes a promise to you, it is a promise kept the minute you decide to enact and play your part in the allowance for him to keep that promise and show you the faith and trust that he has in you. Because like him, it was put in you and given you in your creation by your eternal loving Father. And the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree in this case. So my salvation comes from me. All temptation is nothing more than some form of the basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. That's it. How simple is salvation? You're doing this but to yourself. That was the great news. I know that I talk about this all the time, but you have no idea the joy it brought me to realize that, and to realize in that moment that I could undo it all, and it was all undone, not by the power of what I thought did it, but by joining with the power of my Savior. And allowing him to save me, I am saved. And allowing me to be saved by him, he becomes the Savior of me and the Savior of the world, which I'm given to save. And that's good news. I mean, it unlocks a door for you that perhaps you've passed by a number of times and decided there are other ways out, but that's the only door, the only way out. Salvation seems to come from anywhere except from you. So too does the source of guilt. Now, sometimes it's hard to take that the source of guilt likewise is within me. It's caused by me. I'm the one who makes myself guilty. And yet, when you recognize that you're but doing this to yourself, you also are the one that can allow yourself off the hook. And, I mean, I'm going to look you straight in the eyes and say, your dues have been paid. Believe me, there is no reason in this world for you to continue to operate without the understanding that you have been saved and you will save as you have been saved. And it doesn't take time. What it takes is willingness. And it doesn't happen somewhere in the future. It only happens here and now when you express that willingness by your decision to let this be so. And so it will be for you. You see neither guilt nor salvation as in your own mind, and nowhere else. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, it's an invention. It's an invention rather than an extension of love. You invented something other than the extension of love. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, you must also realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place. The old man taught that just about every day. The problem can't be separate from the solution because they're one and the same, just in a sense, different directions at the same point in time. You stand at a crossroad waiting to decide which way to go. Perhaps you think you'll find something new in the same ways if you've went, but I assure you won't. And you could take my word for it. You know, just as Jesus went on record with Helen, Jesus told Helen that she should take a look and read the Bible more, just to see what he went on personal record with in his own space and time, in his own sojourn. I mean, if you knew me or came to know me and hear the story, and this is the value, I would say, in not just dropping your story, but allowing the story to have the turnaround, in which you do recognize that you're doing it to yourself, and the outcome is different from every other outcome of every other story that you've lived in time and space yourself. I'm going on personal record to say I've tried any number of roads to find my way out of this maze of sickness, pain, suffering, and death. And alone, there is no way to find your way out. It's not until you take the hand of one who's already been down all those roads and found the one that is not in the world. I don't know if you want to refer to what's his name? Scott Peck, the road less traveled. This path is made for your feet alone. Not that you're alone, but it's your feet alone that must travel on the path that allows you to join with that which is no longer on the path, because it's off the path and off the beaten path that we've been beating ourselves with. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your own mind, you must also realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place. Understanding this, you are saved. Understanding this, you are saved. And how do we come to understanding of anything if we are, let's call it, proponents of A Course in Miracles? It's first you forgive, and then you understand. The conceptual reasonability of what's being offered to you here is incredible. It's incredibly reasonable, and it's incredibly simple. But the conceptual understanding of it is useless without the application of it in the moments when the temptation to believe that you are not saved, the temptation to believe that your salvation comes from something else other than you, steps in, and that steps in generally as a point in time where a grievance is about to dawn upon your mind. A grievance is about to be enacted upon you and your brother, thinking that your brother has done something to you that you've actually done to yourself. Sometimes that's a tough pill to swallow, but the results of your willingness to utilize the antidote for the pill that you swallowed in attempting to hold the grievance and understanding and utilizing the idea that your salvation comes from you, and forgive yourself and therefore your brother for what it is you think is happening, and recognize that it's happening for a reason that you have not thought of yet within your own human condition, that you're being offered the door out of hell rather than a continued way into hell. When you apply the teaching, the application, as we were in the beginning of the workbook, it's in the application and the doing of the lessons that the understanding of the theoretical framework that we call a text begins to make sense and be true for you. And the more you utilize and apply these things, the truer and truer this becomes, until you see that what it's led you to is what is true. The thought system that it's offering you is from the whole mind of Jesus Christ and utilized by your right mind. It allows you, even as, even with an ego, to at least have the ego trained, because the ego loves to learn, loves words, loves concepts. It loves to utilize the concepts. So when you allow the ego, you feed the ego these concepts, and it begins to utilize the concepts. There's a point in time where you get hooked by your own teaching, and even the ego is giving you back the right-minded concepts so that in your right mind you could remember to apply them, and in the application of them comes the solution to the dilemma you find yourself in. And the more you learn how trustworthy this teaching is, the more trustworthy you become unto the ways of salvation. My salvation comes from me, it cannot come from anywhere else. My salvation cannot come from any of these things. My salvation comes from me and only me. Review some of the external places where you've looked for salvation in the past. Other people, possessions, situations, events, self-concepts which you sought to make real, rather than recognition of the fact that you've been created as a true, whole, perfect self, and remain created holy and perfect within the mind of God, and hold you in his surety, and would never allow his son to suffer. The seeming cost of success of accepting today's idea is this. It means that nothing outside of you can save you. Nothing outside of yourself can give you peace. But it also means that nothing outside of you can hurt you or disturb your peace or upset you in any way. Now, that should be really good news. And I'm going to add, you may not trust that to be true at first. Don't trust it. Don't trust it. Don't take it on the value of the words. Attempt to apply it. Utilize it to see how trustworthy it is, and how much trust Jesus has in you, and how much trust God has always had in you. And faith, in a sense, is like trust. It's not that you have been faithless. It's that you've put your faith and trust in the wrong things. The faith and trust that it takes to hit a light switch and turn a light on is the faith and trust that you need. That's all the faith and trust. That's the little willingness that you would need, that we need, to begin to utilize these principles and enact them in our life on a daily basis. The seeming cost of accepting today's idea is this. It means that nothing outside yourself can save you. Nothing outside yourself can give you peace. But it also means that nothing outside yourself can hurt you or disturb your peace or upset you in any other way. Today's idea places you in charge of the universe where you belong because of who you are. And isn't that the goal of every ego in the world, to rule the universe? Well, here's the way in which you do it, but without the ego dictating the terms by which the universe is ruled, and the allowance for it. And it's in the song, The Age of Aquarius, and truth will guide the planets, and love will rule the stars, rather than allowing the stars to rule your love life. You, as love, have come to rule the stars. The age of Aquarius in esoteric tradition is the age when the crown chakra of mankind opens and allows the light of reality to shine into it and shine away the darkness. And that's exactly where you find yourself, and that's where the great reversal occurs. No longer will the stars rule your love life, but love, you as love, will rule the stars and rule the universe, and it will be a universe of love. Because it'll be a universe that's ruled by the true, whole, perfect divinity that you are, and the totality of your reality as being what love is, I might add. It's the sum total of the totality of reality is what love is. Love is the sum and substance, as the old man once said. Love is the sum and substance of the entire universe, of the totality of the universe, of which you cannot not be separate and apart from. It's impossible that you're separate from everything. The idea that you can maintain that separation is what, and the attempt to do so, is what causes sickness, suffering, pain, and death. And you no longer have to do that. You can stop this instant if you want and put an end to it. And then learn to walk the ways of salvation with your brothers by your side. There's a line in the song, to lead must follow. You will lead, but you will not lead in the old ways. You will lead by bringing all those who are given you along with you. They'll be at your side. Your mighty companions. They're all around you right now. Why do you think there are certain people who are gravitating toward you in your willingness to accept your function? You are the light of the world. No other light there is in that world. Today's idea puts you in charge of the universe where you belong because of who you are. This is not a role which can be accepted partially. And you must surely begin to see that accepting it is salvation. It may not, however, be clear to you why the recognition of the guilt in your own mind entails the realization that salvation is there as well. But the only way to not appreciate the power of your mind is by learning and recognizing and training it to see that there's nothing outside of it. So my salvation comes from me. And I accepted the salvation the second time, not the first. That's how I'm telling you, that's why I tell you I'm a good example of going on record as trying to go down a different road to achieve the salvation. When Jesus first offered me to help him save the world, I said no, and it would cause a profound amount of suffering that necessitated copious amounts of heroin and other substances to try to do away with the pain, and I never did away with that pain until Jesus offered me that second time and said, are you ready yet to help me save the world? And I had no choice but to say no. And in that moment, the willingness to say yes showed me that all the suffering was right next to the cure, and it had always been there, and it was time to exact the cure for myself rather than the suffering. And you could do this too, and you are. So my salvation comes from me, your salvation comes from you, and when we recognize that we are both safe together, the world of space and time does not have much more time to continue, even as an illusion, rather than the reality we have previously given it.